Hey, like and subscribe, join the family, and watch this video. Commander Zhao became a firebending master by the teachings of Zhang, and he rose through the ranks of the Fire Nation's Fire Navy and became the Admiral of the Fire Navy. He took it upon himself to make capturing the Avatar his #1 priority. And you know what? That completely conflicts with Zuko, and he became a rival and a major villain to Team Avatar. At the end of season 1, Zhao went on to launch a siege on the Northern Water Tribe, and he eventually ended up, which I believe is his greatest accomplishment, he killed the Moon Spirit. Well, for a very brief amount of time anyways. Zhao has so many connections in the story. We even find out that he went to the library and he burned down a whole bunch of Fire Nation books. So even with Zhao being such a prevalent figure and such a prevalent villain within the first arc of Avatar, a question in my head arises. Why is it that Zhao is so forgotten? Why is it that even in the narrative of the story, he's so forgotten? You never see Ozai like, oh man, that guy Zhao, really loved him. Why did they have to go and do that to him? That's just so sad what happened. You never see Azula like, oh man, Zhao, he was such a great admiral. I mean, yes, it fits the villains, like the villains aren't gonna care, but not even the heroes are just like, oh man, remember when we fought Zhao? Like, that was bad. But in my attempt to figure out why is it that this character is so forgotten, even by the fandom, you never hear someone say, hey, my favorite villain of Avatar: The Last Airbender was Zhao. I mean, unlike people like Ozai and Azula, he actually had like a deep backstory, and you got to see how he really was just kind of a product of the Fire Nation society. In Zhao, you got to see how this power-hungry nature isn't just one that you're born into. It's not necessarily that Azula was born into it, or it's not necessarily that Ozai was born into it, but it's something that is taught. It was the very fundamental building blocks to building something like the Fire Nation, because this mentality just doesn't come, it's built. And the answer to this question, why is it that he's so forgotten, isn't just simply, oh, he was only in the first season of Avatar, and the other villains had more seasons. I mean, we barely saw Ozai until like the last season, so that couldn't be the answer. And Azula and Zuko were probably the most shown villains, but yet people still have affinity for those three, and I've quite honestly never seen anybody care about Zhao, to be honest. The answer to this question is a lot deeper than just how much showtime Zhao got. Everything that Zhao stood for, everything that Zhao represented. Let's take a moment to break down what Zhao stood for. Let's take a moment to break down what he represented in his action, and most importantly, his personality. Zhao's personality was that of a narcissist, and one of his greatest personality traits is his arrogance. But it wasn't just this that made Zhao an unappealing villain to most people, because that is shown, arrogance and narcissism is shown in a plethora of literature and films and movies in villains. That's a trait that we see almost too much. But it is that those traits in him led him to wanting to be and needing to be written down in history. I mean, we see in the Northern Siege episodes that he wanted to simply destroy the moon just to go down in the history books as being the man who killed the Moon Spirit. The writers also explained his love for history in a very brief but beautiful way when they showed him in Wang Shitong's library a few years back, and then they show him destroy everything because he doesn't want anybody to know how to defeat the Fire Nation. And then he became the reason why the stupid bird thing like sunk the whole library, so thanks Zhao. I mean, Zhao even went as far as to trying to murder Zuko. He literally tried to like end his life in order to be the one to say that they took out the Avatar and killed the Moon Spirit all in one day. I mean, if this would have worked, he really would have been the Fire Nation's hero. But it didn't work, and Zhao went down in a very gruesome way. The Moon Spirit quite literally came after him and for revenge. And Zhao had the opportunity of being saved by Zuko, but again, his own arrogance stopped him from taking. But up until Legend of Korra, we thought Zhao had just died. We thought Zhao was just drowned and murdered. But in fact, Zhao did not perish, and as a punishment for everything that he did, he ended up stuck in the spirit world in the fog of lost souls, and he just sat there and slowly became insane as he shouts out his accomplishments and everything that he's achieved. Again, fitting the narrative of someone who wants to be remembered. But the irony is that he wasn't remembered. In that very scene, he goes after Tenzin and he's like, oh, you're the Avatar. And Tenzin has no idea who he is. Kaya has no idea who he is. Bumi has no idea who this man is. And all of the teachings and all of the lessons, no one ever mentioned Zhao. And that was his punishment. And honestly, that's his punishment in the real world too. Because he wanted to be such a remembered figure and he did it and went about it in such a terrible way, he ended up becoming the least remembered figure. No one knows who Zhao is. Well, we all know of him, but no one thinks of him. And that's a very deep lesson in itself. I mean, what the writers were really saying here is like, if you want to make history, then you gotta be on the right side of it. Hey, like and subscribe, join the family, and watch this video.